Greetings to everyone in the name of the Lord. It's a wonderful blessing to have everyone here, and we are praying to the Lord for all our needs. Right now, just to take a session on, it's a continuation of the last time, whatever I'm trying to cover up. Is everybody able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. If any problems, then just let me know because I'm not sure. Because when I put screen sharing, I just want to know how everything. So if anything, any problem, just let me know, right? So just to do a recap from what was finished last time, it was the session is about the first and second Simon books. This is considered actually a single book under a Jewish writing, and it has been divided in our Christian Bible as two separate books, the first and second Samuel. And you will just to recap from what had happened, what was discussed last time. Um, we have an overview of the Bible, which is in the reading here in the book of Samuel, that you have about Samuel's family, Eli's family, Israel's faith and the crisis that is there related to it, and then the time of King Saul, and then the time between the two, Saul and David, and during David's time. This is how, when you do a quick reading in the books, this is how you can almost divide the information provided. So to have an understanding of what was happening, we should also have a remembrance of when you had gone through the book of Judges. Their topics are very similar. So that is why it was understood that we almost have the similar authorship is happening from the book of Judges into the book of Samuel. You are able to identify these many points are very similar. In the Jewish book Bible, when they are grouping these books, they are grouping Joshua also along with these books, and because they are looking at this is not just a pure historical point of view, it is also God's leadership and framing of these families and how they are brought in the land and made to be established in the land. So it is not just a historical writing, it is also about edification. So the purpose of writing this book here, you have two different authors. You have prophets who are writing and scribes who are writing down certain facts and how things are written between these three books: Joshua, the Judges, and then First and Second Samuel, and First and Second Kings as well. The last time what we have finished actually is I had come down to the chapter 9, where Saul is getting introduced to Prophet Samuel. And here, what had happened here is what we can see. It's a very interesting introduction that is coming between the two parties, where uh, Saul doesn't know who actually Samuel is. And Samuel, as we look at in the writings, it seems like Samuel was supposed to be a very prominent prophet. But Saul does not, and his servant also does not seem to give that kind of importance here. So we are able to see that two different writers are coming up to show you something is building up here. Samuel, who has been a guiding voice for the people when they want to inquire what to do, and God is speaking through Samuel, and they have uh, a good number of years of peace. And yet, when the selection of Saul is coming in, Saul does not reflect that kind of recognition that Samuel is that kind of prophet from God. So you will see this build up, why it was there. You will pick it on your own. You will see what you are able to see from here. So this is what is happening in chapter 9. And Samuel, you will understand that when the people told that we need an actual ruler to help us with many of our problems what we are facing, Samuel thought that they don't want to, the people don't want him in the picture. So God tells him that that is not the issue here. Is the people didn't understand really that God is the one who is helping and guiding, and God is going to be the ruler and judge. So Samuel here, even when he's old, he's learning little things, even which he did. Some people will say, no, when you're old, you will mature. Here also, you'll see that Samuel is one person who is still listening to God. He is learning certain things and understanding where and what people in the general public, how they are functioning. So let us quickly now let's get into the rest of the chapters, how it started developing. So by chapter 10, we are seeing that Samuel is giving certain signs to Saul that these are the factors, these are the things that is going to turn your mind and make you firm in God's selection. So he has given a certain number of events, but he in the last he has given about a 7 day wait, and this 7 day wait we will see later what is going to happen in the 7 day wait. After he has disclosed and he had a conversation with him, Samuel privately anoints him. Then later, when Samuel wants to declare to the elders of the people that okay, God is now selected an elder, a leader for you, Saul actually ended up hiding rather than coming in the public. And later he was pulled out from where he was hiding, and he was made to be presented. There are certain leaders among the tribes of Israel, they didn't accept the selection. First of all, even they found that he was hiding rather than coming in front of the people. There can be possibility that he didn't have any history of leadership in warfare. He was not actually a judge among his own tribe itself or his house. So they didn't find Saul to be a very good selection, and some of them actually left away from without accepting Saul as a king. Later, what happened was during the harvest time period, we see that Ammonites came to terrorize Israel by selecting one particular village. And we have to remember that this is a continuation story coming from the time of the judges. People are terrified. You see that, in villages and all, there is a lot of, what do you say, they are not all very close by. If somebody has to get help, they need to send a messenger over to the next village to get any information or send information. They need to send people. So the idea of this Ammonites, what they wanted to do is target the small village, mutilate them, and finally the bigger group of the tribes of Israel has to take care of these mutilated people. They have to take care of them. There's no other go. And this reminds them of the history of what is happening during the judges period when the enemies will come, trouble them. So there was a terror among the people that we are again going to go through problems just like in the past. So what happens here is God inspires Saul to act very quickly, and he cuts up the bullock that he had, and he sends a warning to the people that you better come as per this sign. You better come, and it is clearly written that people had fear of God, not that they were afraid that who is this small person or Saul coming here in the picture. They had the fear of God, and that is why they assembled for warfare. So you can understand there is one thing here where these tribes, powerful tribes, they will try to understand whether it is worth enough to go to save a village where it is in some part of the country. Should they send their young men off for war, and should they leave their villages unguarded? There are many things like that that is coming to play. So God inspired Saul, now you have to act right now. And that is where when he went for the warfare, whoever came with him, they don't mention exactly how many people come together and play the actual part of the war. So what does happen is that they win the battle very quickly without having to negotiate between the tribes who will lead the war, who will do what kind of a strategy is used. They won the battle. And then, with that winning of that battle, everybody got a kind of sign of relief that this is where, when God told through Samuel that this will be your leader, we are going to accept that right now because they have won that battle. So it was not a battle that was won by numbers. It was a battle that was won by sign from God that Saul was selected for the purpose. One more key thing here to remember is the usage of the word. When everybody kept calling Saul, when they were asking Samuel for a king, God did not use the same term when he was saying that I selected someone. He said, I selected the captain of my people. So you will find this thing later in the future also when it comes to David. It's always captain of the people. It is never the word king. King is never used by God when he's talking to Samuel. It is only the reference between the people when they use the word Malik, the king, It is never used by God. It is always captain of his people. So later, what happens of is that Samuel, once that this is the third time that Samuel starts anointing king as Saul as king. This is the third time. You have this private time anointing. Then when he tried to bring them for the first time when he was presented in front of the people, and then the third time was when they accepted the outcome of the war was victory. They accepted it, and that was the third time he was anointed. So you will not find anybody as unique as Saul, who was anointed three times to be king. And then Samuel mentions a very clear thing about this aspect about the victory of the Ammonites. What he mentions that is that you all thought, he's telling to people that you all thought that the victory came because you had a king who could be a ruler over you, who could be smart at handling this type of warfare incidents. But then Samuel shows through a sign by there was thunder and lightning and it affected the harvest ground. And then people feared that what Samuel was actually saying, that it was not the victory because they relied on a king, the new leader that is in Saul. That is not how the victory came. The victory came was that God was doing the saving and the leading all this time. And what will happen later is that the people will again have an error about this understanding that God was the one who was doing the leading and the saving and the provisions. It is not any future leaders. So this is how he finishes off and he takes away from the serious affairs. Why I use the word serious affairs, you'll find that some people believe that Samuel is a mixture of both priesthood and civil duties as a judge. In fact, that is not actually very true. Uh, he is called as a prophet. He had done sacrifices, which you can compare just like Prophet Elijah has done, and he has worn the linen ephod. And we can see that David also has worn the linen ephod. That doesn't mean that he's a Levite. So this is a very specific thing that Samuel never did throughout his years as a judge for Israel. He never put his hand or did anything regarding the tabernacle and where the ark of the covenant is kept. He's so far in this chapter, so far what he will come, he's an old man right now, Samuel. You'll find that he is not dealing with anything to do with the tabernacle. So he is not actually in the lineage of priest. So we'll have that discussion later. If anybody is like going to study the book of Chronicles, you'll find, and language studies, you'll find that Samuel was selected by God to be a prophet. He is not a replacement for any activities regarding to the temple and the Ark of the Covenant. And Samuel understands his role very carefully, and even throughout his old age, we find that he's very faithful to God's calling. He does not overcross that calling. He does his calling, and he keeps to his calling, and he hands over the judging part. He hands over to Saul to be the leader for the people. Now, what happens right after that is a lot of people starts coming around with Saul. There's 2,000 men with Saul, 1,000 men with Jonathan. And by this time, a group of Philistines, they come over as usual as raiding into the Israeli territories. And Jonathan had a victory over the Philistines. So here what you can see, here what I have done is marking. I have given a geographical look here, the position of the places where it has happened. Here you have Saul's army, 2,000 men stationed in along this area. Jonathan's army with his 1,000 men, they are stationed in this area. They had a fight here in Gibeon. The Jonathan's army was victorious over the Palestinian raiding group. And what happened is the Palestinians, they wanted to come back with a revenge. So they had three different groups divided in order to do the raiding. And the important part is this particular group here and here. What happened is when they started getting surrounded, Saul and his men started going to Gilgal. And if you remember in the previous time which have been mentioned, which was mentioned here by in chapter 10, we're looking at the 7 days wait. What happened here is this is the 7 days wait that was told by Prophet Samuel that Saul has to wait for that particular incident to confirm that what is God's calling in his life. So what has happened here is he's doing a 7 day wait, and that 7 day wait, what happened, it leads to is like many people are now doubting whether Saul is actually a capable leader or not, and many of them left. And then what he decided to do is he decided to have a uh, calling of the Lord by himself. He decided to call him. And then when Samuel came and he told, why did he do all this? Then he said he was afraid that the people was leaving him and we are not going to know anything from God. So Samuel, what happens there is Samuel told, this was not what was told to you. And Samuel actually leaves from there without actually giving any intimation what is God going to tell or what is going to do for the future. And it failed with that, and they ended up with 600 men. Now, because there was no understanding what was going to be done for the warfare, Saul actually declared a fast, and the fast was not it was not made very famous. It was taken gradual for everybody to know that there was a fast that was happening. So this is also one of the incident that happened in that period of time when all these Palestinians came and this 1 week of waiting that has happened. Here, what I want to show is the most famous incident that you will come to know, and this is the north direction. This one is where the combined 600 men of Saul and Jonathan is waiting at this camp there towards the south. This viewpoint is from the southeast. So this famous incident that you will know about the two hills is this is how it looked in this location. This is the pass where the Palestinian came with their ready, and this is the valley that they are staying at. So they have such a huge confidence that Jewish men cannot cross, or the Hebrew men cannot cross over this terrain. And this is a little close-up picture of that particular terrain. You can see how difficult this terrain is, and they're not expecting any of the Israeli people to cross over and make a fight with the camp because this is the ditch. So now you can imagine when there is no voice of God trying to guide Saul what to do, because he really missed the point that God wanted to speak to him, but he has to wait on God's calling. And Samuel was supposed to talk, and he didn't get that calling. So now you can see that God is guiding Jonathan. And this is the type of terrain that Jonathan crossed over. You can see how tough it was. So when he got an impression from that he can go over to the Palestinians, you can imagine that he crossed such a treacherous ground. And from here he's having the conversation with the Palestinian guardsmen that he was telling, he had the sign that if they call me up, then God is telling that he's going to give victory to us. So that is the terrain you can see there. So Jonathan and his armor bearer goes there, and there is this measurement of land that is mentioned, which is not actually clear in translation what it actually means, how much we can measure. But I just briefly like put one arrow mark. There was an area that he fought a couple of Philistine guardsmen during the night time. So what happened is that as this fighting took place, there was an earthquake that happened and there was confusion. And the Philistine camp, they thought that the Israelis were able to cover this ground and there could be treacherous traitors among them, and they were cutting each other, and that is how they were leaving from this pass. Knowing this, the camp over here, they started chasing the Philistines, and they thought that they have got their victory now over the Philistines. Now, immediately after this, we are coming to know that the people were very tired. And Jonathan, when he was chasing them, he stopped at one place and he decided to take some honey for getting some energy. So when some people with him told him, Jonathan, can we also eat? He said, there is no problem, we can go ahead and eat. So what we come to know is they just started eating just without actually much planning. They were that tired. They were known. They were just reported that they had taken the animals what they could find and just start eating by the meat. This news went all the way to King Saul, and he started showing his irritation, and he really ripped his cloth off in anger, saying that this is something that it is against God and his commandments. That is how he expressed the particular incident. He told that everybody has to stop what they're doing, come, cook your meat, do it in the right way, and then everybody stopped what they were doing and they thought everything will be done peacefully. So that evening, it was the first time that Saul decided to lift an altar. But prior to this one, usually what we find that anytime there's a phase of victory, they had always erected an altar, and this is the first time Saul is erecting an altar. Now, these are actually some very fishy incidents. If you can really capture it, you'll see something really fishy in all of this. Now, the next day morning, he decides that, okay, we have to continue pursuing the Philistines. And he makes an inquiry for God to answer it, that how they can finish it, can we go ahead and do it, and there is no answer. So then he asks that, okay, let us use the lot. This lot is there are different systems in this one. I have just simply used a representation of one of the probable things about when they meditate and ask for God's guidance. A selection of tribes and people are using certain objects like this. So it came down to that Jonathan has to be fit for dying because God did not speak to the people. Now, if you remember one of the incidents in the book of the Judges, with one of the judge, when after victory of the war, he said that, Lord, if you give me victory in this war, the first thing that I see, I will give as a sacrifice. And his daughter came and appeared first. In that incident, if you remember, nobody cared to interject to say that that is not the right thing to do. By this generation, this particular generation, when this incident has happened, where the king is using his authority, his leadership to say that, that I made a vow in front of God, I am talking in front of God, and now this has been declared that Jonathan has fault. He has to die for whatever fault that God is not speaking to us. By this time, this generation of people decides that we can object to such kind of thinking. God has given us victory through Jonathan. So we are not going to put Jonathan to death. And that is how this incident closed. So what we are looking here is from the incident where Samuel told to Saul that you have to have the 7-day wait. Then you will definitely, the sign that God is trying to lead you to be the captain of his people. Saul did not obey that. So from there, what we're seeing is actually snapshots of the way how Saul behaves. This ripping of cloth over here, this incident, hearing the people were eating meat, it shows how much he is not in control. And he's shifting the blame of that, how things are not in control, because it is not because of him. It is because of factors outside him. So you can see that by next day, he's thinking that let the blame even go to his son. It does not matter his son is put to death also. He just wants to show that he is not to put to blame for lack of God talking or not giving initiative. He even called for a wrong fast. So here we'll find that where Saul is actually showing and demonstrating certain aspects about his character. Now, under his leadership, there have been victories, even with this incident, that when God did not speak to him concerning how he was supposed to walk, God still gave victory because has overall many people are crying out to the Lord for victory in their lives. So there are different wars that were successful under the leadership of Saul. They fought with the Philistine all his life. He fought with the Ammonites. He fought with the Moabites, with the Edomites. And then here in northern part of Israel, where we have Ephraim and Manasseh tribes, they are giving credit that he also has done one of these. Are two probable locations which I marked. It is not sure which one of the places he would have fought. But later in David's time, we will know that there is something that these two northern tribes give benefit that later you will find friends or enemies out of that region. So they have fought in that area. Now, the most famous incident that we'll come to know about to us the fault of King Saul is related to this Amalekites. Now, what has happened here is, if you remember the incident way back during Moses' time and the Israelis when they were having the 40-year walk in the desert, one incident happened where the Amalekites killed a lot of the old age people in the group, and God told that never to forget that incident. So you can see that how many generations have passed, and now God is not talking to Saul directly, he's still talking through Samuel. And he's reminding that now is the time to take action about the Amalekites. So the people are not the one who are willing to do this. God is reminding that this is something to take action of. You cannot forget it. Now, some people will ask, like, how, why was it selected there? One way to look at it is there's an accumulation of generations with their way of doing things. Amalekites are not ones who are having any history of doing justice among the society. It has been recorded even in the book of Joshua that they have high level of violence among their kingdoms. They have stories. If you look at archaeological evidences, they practice a lot of evil deeds. Mutilation is also one of their kind of actions that they do. And God has reminded the Israelis that you have a history with these people, and you are not supposed to let them go at this generation. So after that particular direction was given, all the Israelis as union, they went together and they had a victory over the Amalekites. And this well-known reason incident, that they came back victorious and they were celebrating this under the leadership of King Saul, the victory that they got. But what we all know is that something that was told to Saul to be the leadership over his people, he did not, excuse me, he did not accomplish that commandment. He is the one who was to tell the people. Now, if you remember again, have a flashback to what was happening when Samuel was guiding the people and he was turning old. His sons became judges and they were not very honest. They actually took bribes. So people said that, you know what, we don't have a good leadership. There in that incident of time, people were still thinking that the idea of leadership is getting only benefit and freedom and not falling to the enemy. But God was giving guidance every time. What is the right thing to do that the people still have not learned? So under the selection of Saul, direction was given to Saul what should be done. He is supposed to engage with the people now. That is not Samuel's job anymore. People did not want to have Samuel's opinion. They thought it is Samuel's opinion, it is not God's guidance. So now God is giving Saul the guidance. He is supposed to engage with the elders what to do, but he forfeits that responsibility. He lends himself into the mind and the influence of the stronger people, and then he gives an excuse saying that the people were keeping the king, there is benefit, there is something here and there. Samuel did not want anything to do with it, because Samuel, right now, all these years, as long as he was convincing the elders to follow what God was doing right, he always saw success. He didn't see where God was silent to him. He never had that experience. So now this is a time where he cannot deal with this person anymore now. And this is not the first time Saul demonstrated direct disobedience. And some people are saying that accidentally he would have pulled on Samuel's cloth and on his robe and pulled it and it tore. It is not accidental. It is a frustration that Saul wanted to have control and he pulled it because he was losing his honor among the people, and it was done in anger. It is not an accident, it is done in anger. And Samuel tells him openly in front of others that what will happen in his future, that the kingdom will not be with him, it is not established with him, since he does not want to follow what God says. So then we have a period of time where Samuel was actually crying out concerning the people's future, and God told that Samuel, now is not the time. Come, I have shown you, I'll show you a captain of my people. Who will be the next captain of my people? Remember, it's not the word Malik. As always, the people kept calling, where is the next Malik? God kept using the word captain of my people. So here we come to know uh, where Samuel comes and visit this family, where God directs to come here and tell, and to this family of Jesse. And where is very interesting here is it's not just about him visiting this family; it's about the transition of prophet Samuel to learn something even at this age. He really, when you grow older and you see many things, how do you take the next turn? When God told him, no, you go out and go, I'll show you somebody who will be the next captain of the people. He was ready to go, but he was also fearful because he mentioned that what if people tell to King Saul that I went out looking for someone? He was ready to work with God, and he still did not understand how God is going to direct him for the next thing. And he was ready to go ahead. And when he meets the family and he meets the person whom God has guided to whom to select as the next captain of his people, you will see a huge contrast how he engaged with Saul when God showed Saul and how he's doing it now with David. You can see that he does not mention anything about any future events, what is going to happen. There's no confirmation about his selection as the captain of his people. He does not call the boys separately and have a conversation. In Saul's incident and all, there's long conversation. One whole night conversation is going on. He's very happy when they're writing the description about Samuel talking with Saul and all. And the next thing is here you can see that Samuel quietly does everything, and he anoints him in front of the family. They had that feast which is mentioned, and then they leave, and he leaves. That's all we can see about the anointing of the next captain of his people. You don't see, it's a huge contrast when compared with Saul's selection. The next thing what we come to know is what is happening with King Saul. The anointing that went on to David, we can see that anointing is not resting upon on King Saul anymore. We are getting to know his behavior, that the evil spirit that is now tormenting him, he is furious, he is not calm, unable to rest, and mentally tormented. The news spreads around that we know that King Saul is having some torment and they want to find some cure. And we can see that with the description that is written about this, that those days also they knew about demon possession, they know about evil spirit possession. So they don't make it a big deal about spreading it around what happened about King Saul. They did it as a secret. And they wanted to find out if there was some solution to this. And you can see that they did not approach Prophet Samuel. They were not able to go to the tabernacle. They were not able to find peace with God. They were trying to find other means how we can bring peace into the mind of King Saul. And we come to know that this is the first time they're having an introduction of David as the boy who can, when they sing beautiful songs, Saul will be pacified from his experiences. So there is, and we can see that one more point over here to remember is way back then, we are able to see that when in the book of Psalms, they say, where does God dwell in? God dwells in the praises of his people. And then when God's presence is there, you'll see there's rest to the mind and there's calmness and peace. So you can see that the people, whoever selected David and found David and brought to Saul, when David opened his mouth, it is not just some composition of some kind of music and tone from his heart. He was worshipping God and bringing praise of God, and that is the change of environment that happened in the place. I will close the session now because it became already 10:05. I will end the session here. Next time, the next session, we will just, I think I will just quickly come with one incident before I close down. Just 5 more minutes. I'll just finish one more incident. The most famous incident is this one. Everybody knows this incident. For the time being, just ignore this location, this King David's palace. For the time being, just ignore this. This is a very well-known incident that everybody knows. This was coming up to the where the Palestinian Goliath is coming inward. So this is the geographical location where it has taken place. The Israeli camp is located here. The Palestinian camp was here, and this was the valley where it has happened. And I don't have to give any explanation to this incident. Everybody knows what has happened here. That how David had come into this camp. He witnessed what was going on. You remember how Goliath was giving the challenges to the people, and the spirit of fear was governing the Israeli camp. Spirit of fear. And it is in David's voice that we can hear that who is this? He kept challenging, who is this Palestinian who will talk like this? Who is this Palestinian who can give challenge like this? We had to go to a certain detail to understand that story, that nobody will send out a kid for a duel. And nobody will use, and they used David as an insult to Goliath and also to know how Goliath is going to fight. That is the only reason that they sent Goliath. They kept on hearing this boy, this teenager, coming and talking and saying, who is this Palestinian? Who is this Palestinian? And he gave a lot of talk. And that talk, even Saul, when he looked at one David, he had pity for the boy. He said, you send him, but send him at least with my armor. When he gets a beating, at least it will not be that painful or something. He had a very soft heart to at least give him his armor. But they send this guy. Nobody, in this world, only evil people will do that. You can understand how the spirit of fear and that type of leadership that was surrounding adult Hebrew Israelis, how they decided to use David in this incident. And God is the one who preserved David's life against all the odds. So it is not about how God was trying to reveal David to the public. That is not the incident here. Many people will try to keep talking in that interpretation. But if you read through that passage once again, you will find that David was selected out of for being put in front of Goliath because of the way he talked. And they needed someone to go and face Goliath. And they needed to know how Goliath will behave. So they found this kid was a very immature. To their eyes, David was very immature. He said a lot of things. Who is this one? And he's using God's name. God is the one who has given anointing into David's life. God will preserve David in this particular incident. God did not send David to go fight the Goliath. It is what the people pushed him. So you can imagine the social structure in Israel through this incident. How many boys like this would have done? They would have treated boys for unwanted warfare methods. If you want to pick up a clue, you can take the clue from the book of Judges when Gideon asked his son to strike the king whom they captured. And what is written about that Gideon's son? He was trembling. He could not take the sword and do that type of act. So the men had their way of dealing and training themselves to think that they are men. And you can see that in this incident, David is put into that type of circumstances. That is what has happened, and God preserved David in this incident. So if you are, and I would like to end the session here. I just want, if you anytime again go back and read that passage, you can again see that how God is the one who preserved David's life when all the men done a very wicked thing to send the child out to meet Goliath.